What's going on, guys? Junior's Fishing Company, another deer hair jig video. Today I've got a 1/4 ounce Clam Outdoors tungsten jig head. I can't remember exactly what the name of the jig brand or whatever. It's Clam Outdoors tungsten jig head, 1/4 ounce, and I ended up not loving the color. It was like an orange and yellow, not orange, green. It was like a green and yellow, and I wasn't a huge fan of it. But the funny thing is I ended up just doing green. So I kind of laughed at that. And then I dipped it a bunch in this water-based head cement. And it's hard to tell. I even have my lights down. But this is a super chartreuse green. And so I don't know what's going on with the light. I ended up just cleaning off this eye, the eye of the hook, just because it was getting a little clogged up. And I mean, I think it looks almost a little neater too. But super durable. This thing is not going to go anywhere. Hopefully when I get my razor blade on there, it doesn't chip any of this off. This head cement has worked well in the past. This is going to be a pretty simple jig. I really like if I have a really bright head like this, whether it's super bright orange, chartreuse, something even pink, I love to do a really dark body. And so what I'm going to do, I've got 3 stacks of black, and this back stack is going to have a little bit of chartreuse in it. So it's going to have a little bit of a chartreuse tail and a chartreuse head, but everything in the middle is going to be all black. So I have 3 stacks, but this is the only one that has any additional color besides black in it. I really like an all white with a little bit of color, or an all black with like a really bright head. I just like how it works. Unfortunately, there was a bait guard there and it got stuck, so you might be able to tell my bump's really weird, but I couldn't get some of the metal off. I tried even filing it, but I didn't want to file my hook, so I'm actually just going to start wrapping there. It's going to be a shorter jig, probably 4 inches, just because I've got plenty of 5-inch jigs, and you want to make sure that you've got different, not just different colors, but different sizes, different amounts of bucktail on jigs. You don't want to tie giant clumps every time. You don't want them super thin every time. I try to make them almost different, especially if I tie like 2 of the same one. I'll tie them a little bit differently, just because that way if I'm really liking the color but I want something smaller, or if they're really biting and I want something bigger, I can switch and I don't have to worry. So I'm going to get this spun around. Again, this is just a little bit of chartreuse in that tail, and I'm going to get that spun around. And the flash I'm going to use is just going to be standard black holographic Flashaboo. I'm going to get that cinched down. I got 210 white. I've just got white so I can see when I'm trimming. I can see my thread, so I don't necessarily... I actually hit my thread quite a bit. If you've ever seen my other videos, I'll hit my thread when I'm trimming my jig, but that's why you do those security wraps. So I'm going to get super tight wraps here down. Then I can come up just a little bit. I don't want to come up too much because I have to fit 2 stacks of hair and some flash here. I'm going to get my second one. It's all black. I'm going to get that evened out. And it's actually about the same amount of hair as this one. It might look a little bit thinner, but this tail is going to be really long. And so I just want to add a little bit more body to where the tail isn't going to be. So that should be good. So I'm trimming quite a bit of this off, because this isn't necessarily going to be some giant bait. And a 1/4 ounce is probably my favorite weight to throw. It's just, for me personally, kind of the most versatile. You can fish it deep, You can fish it shallow. It's heavy enough where you can use it in heavy wind sometimes, but it's not going to sink like a 3/8 ounce jig will. And I really don't care about tungsten or lead on jigs like this. Really doesn't matter to me. A smaller jig head, it's just a smaller jig head. So I'll get that wrapped down, and then this is where I'm going to put my flash. And I have just a snip of room right up by my head. So I don't want to get that too thick. So I've got my black right here. It's just standard black holographic Flashaboo. And I want it to go fully back because the black isn't going to take away any of that chartreuse on the tail. It's just going to add flash. If this was like red or gold, it would. So I don't want the, I just want the flash in this tinsel. I don't need the color. So if that makes any sense. So I'll get that wrapped down. Just a couple wraps. Then I'm going to trim this off and flip it around. Make sure that these are tapered out. Should be good. Get that right on top. I really like how this jig head turned out. It'll be a good bait in stained water because it's so bright, but also on clear water too because you'll see it from a mile away. And it's not like this whole bait is super chartreusey. If the chartreusey? It's not like this bait is just all bright. Alright, flash is down. I put a little bit of super glue over that tinsel just to make sure that it doesn't, that it stays where I want it to. I've got my last stack of black, and I've got a lot of long ones in here, and I thought about picking them out, but I kind of like a little bit more to come onto the body. So it's going to be pretty short. I'm going to cut quite a bit of this off, and it's going to have a ton of air in it. I almost didn't put this stack here just because I don't need a ton of flare, but for the sake of saving time I just ended up doing it. Make sure that that glue, so I'm going to come right up here, get a couple tight wraps, and I'm just going to keep it loose while I spin this around, because it's even flaring as I'm pushing it around. Get that 360 around. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to start kind of working my way up and wrapping tightly. And the reason I'm using this white thread is because now I can see it. I can see my white thread. I'll come right up there to my head, and I'm going to take my razor blade. There was a ton of flare in here, but that's alright. It's going to mat down anyway when it gets wet. I just like to, you can actually, it helps seize your taper, show your taper too. But I'm going to trim this up and we'll get this whip finished off. Alright, chartreuse and black, a little bit of flash. That chartreuse tail is just going to show right at that tip. Everything else will kind of be covered up by the other stacks of bucktail, so you can see through it now, but when it mats down, you're not going to see that. You'll just see this little chartreuse tip. And so, again, bright heads I love, because then you can just kind of use a solid color on the body, maybe a little bit of accent, but these heads do all of that attraction for you. I almost put a rattle on this, but this bait is bright enough where if I'm fishing clear water, I don't really need to worry about a rattle or anything like that. But Clam, 1/4 ounce tungsten jig, painted with Do It paint, Chartreuse. Like and subscribe. Take a look at the Junior Fishing Company channel. See you on the next one.